Hey everybody, this video continues our discussion of Chapter 5 in Price Analysis, a fundamental approach to the study of commodity prices. In this section, we're basically going to be trying to explain why there is variation in basis, or why there is variation in the difference between local prices for grain and the futures price for grain. So figure 11 shown here kind of basically just shows the general region where warehouses that are regular for delivery are located. And in a nutshell, it's along the Illinois River from Peoria up to Joliet, and then from the Des Plaines River that goes up through here, and the Cal-Sag Canal that kind of cuts to the east towards Indiana. But to talk to you in a little more detail, I'm going to click over to Google Maps so I can show you a little more interactively. Alright, so here we are zoomed in a little bit. I've got Peoria here, the Illinois River, all along here, and just below Joliet, the Illinois River and the Des Plaines River become two different things. Zooming back out, I can show you that the Des Plaines River runs up north through Joliet, and then it comes up here. And north of Orland Park, there's this canal that cuts off to the east called the Cal-Sag Canal. There are lots of elevators regular for delivery in that canal. And if I come over here and search for Burns Harbor, Indiana, we can figure out that Burns Harbor, Indiana is over here on the southern tip of Lake Michigan, and there's canals that connect all of these things together, and that makes it convenient for having delivery locations that are all easily accessible to one another and within a pretty tight location. So let's think back to our running example of an elevator in Royal, Illinois. So you can see it here on the map. We've got Champaign right here, Springfield, Bloomington, Chicago. And if you want to understand what the basis at Royal, Illinois is, it's essentially going to reflect mostly transportation costs to get grain from Royal, Illinois to the Illinois waterway system. Is that? Well, you could, in theory, take the grain that is purchased by the elevator at Royal, Illinois, put it on a train or put it on a truck, and send it to one of the elevators that are regular for delivery and have them purchase your grain. And the price that you get in those locations that are regular for delivery near the expiration of a futures contract should be pretty much the same thing as the futures price. So, saying that one more time another way, the futures price represents the expected price at a specific location here along the Illinois waterway on a specific date, the expiration of the futures contract. And the basis should be the difference between the price in a local market like Royal, Illinois, and the price of the futures contract. And if you think about what must more or less drive the difference in those prices is the cost it would take to get grain from here in Royal, Illinois to there, or there, or there, depending on which warehouse you deliver to. So now I've switched back to our textbook and I'm showing you a picture, figure number 13, where all of the dots in the figure represent elevators that are within, I think, 25 miles of Champaign. And this kind of helps drive home the point that these local prices through space have to be interrelated. Because if you're a farmer producing corn somewhere here between Champaign and Viment, you can feasibly take your grain to any one of these elevators for very marginal difference in transportation. You harvest it here, you put it on a truck, you take it to any one of these locations. The difference is going to be very, very marginal. So these elevators, when they're putting out their bids, they have to be cognizant of what the other elevators are putting out their bids at. They're going to look at the futures price, see where that's at. They're going to look at their competitors within a 20 to 50 mile radius and see what they're putting out their bids at. And they're going to pretty much stay somewhere in that ballpark. So you'll see that there's a lot of correlation within a small local area of what basis that specific elevators are offering. Alright, so now what I want to do is zoom out a little bit and show you what the broader regional patterns of basis looks like. And that requires access to data that I don't have readily available. So I'm going to come over here to a tab with Google in it. And I've searched for corn basis 2017. I'm going to click on the Images tab and see if someone has done this work for me. And this one looks pretty good. I'm going to click Open this box here. And what you see plotted here are, I think, county level average bases for corn on January 13th, 2017. So you can see Chicago is here, and it's a little hard to see underneath it, but Missouri is outlined here. There's Kansas City, St. Louis is here. You see Peoria, Springfield, Champaign should be somewhere in here, although it's not on the map. And then Iowa is over here. You can see it faintly outlined. Minnesota and the Dakotas, at least South Dakota is depicted there. Now you can see some general patterns here that usually hold true. So you'll see higher basis values in Illinois near the delivery location of the futures contract. And you'll see in general that as you move to the west, that basis gets wider or more negative. And that kind of reflects this need to compensate for transportation costs, because there's a surplus of corn in these regions of the Corn Belt, and some of it will be used locally to feed livestock and produce ethanol and that sort of thing, but a lot of it is going to have to be exported out of state, and the direction it usually moves is towards the Mississippi River or to the southeast to deficit corn locations. So you see this really predominant pattern of prices weakening as you move to the west and getting better as you move south along the Mississippi River. And that is pretty common to see. It's common, but you do see some little packets of stronger prices. For example, in Iowa here, you see several locations of yellow that are sort of surrounded by pink. And that should represent that there's stronger, very specific local demand in that county compared to its neighboring county. So there's probably either a lot of livestock to feed in that county or a lot of ethanol production capacity, so that there's more demand to use the corn in this specific location in this county than one county over. Now, it can't differ by too much, because people that are growing corn in this county can just as easily put their corn on a truck and drive it 30 miles across the county border. So they can't differ by too much, but the basis is influenced by local demand factors. And you've seen the state of Iowa's basis strengthen since the ethanol boom, kind of dramatically. This was before ethanol was a thing. This seemed to be a much more linear progression of weakness across here. And now it's kind of like this steep downhill slope, and then it kind of falls off a cliff as you move out of Iowa and into the Dakotas. Okay, we've covered most of what we need to for the section talking about basis, but I would be remiss if we didn't talk briefly about the formal definition. Basis is always the spot price minus the futures price. And you can see there in the bullet points I've listed the main things that we discussed earlier in the video that should be driving basis. Number one is transportation costs to get the grain from surplus regions to use regions to deficit regions, and it's also kind of related to the futures market is the reference point that we're calculating basis against, so distance from the delivery location of the futures contract is also a factor. So variation in the basis can be pretty significant in its effect on a farmer and other grain handling companies' bottom line. So they watch what's going on with the basis very closely. And you'll hear them say terminology like the basis is strengthening to denote that the cash price is moving up towards the futures price, or weakening if the cash price is getting lower compared to the futures price. And that relates to whether the number that is typically negative throughout the Corn Belt is getting, if the basis is strengthening, then the basis will be becoming less negative, or if the basis is weakening, it will be becoming more negative. And this pretty much concludes what we've got for Chapter 5. So thanks for following along, and we'll see you in the next chapter.